working with others certainly has benefits, but it also has detriments. Okay, and this is a quick illustration to show how this comes about. Okay? Let's say you're working alone on a project. You're doing all of it. How much time and energy do you need to spend communicating with other people about what you're doing?
Probably none.
Yeah, none. I mean, unless you have multiple personalities, you don't have to be communicating with yourself. You know what you're trying to do.
All right, we'll cross our fingers.
Okay,
then.
right? Okay. So if you're working by yourself, you really have no communication. That's absolutely necessary. Okay, now, let's say you take on an employee or you're working with a contractor. How much communication do you need then?
Well, as much as it takes for you to communicate to them what they should be doing and for them to communicate back to you so you can make sure you're on the same wavelength.
Exactly. So it's no longer zero.
Right.
But it's probably not a whole lot
minimal
either. You can both get on the same page relatively quickly, usually, unless you have a disagreement. And, you both have to be on the same page in order to get things done. Now, what happens if you add another person? So now you're working with two people instead of just one.
Well, I mean, it depends. It depends on if you're all in the same place at the same time. Hopefully it won't take that much longer, but oftentimes that's really not the way it works. Like one person will be in this office, one person will be over there, and you've got to pretty much triple the time.
Yeah, and you have to, not only do you have to communicate with person A, but you have to communicate with person B.
And make sure they're communicating.
And A and B need to communicate too, okay? So what happens if you start working with 12 people?
Right. I know. I can see where this is going, and it gets messy.
Yeah. So basically, this is the idea called communication overhead, which basically means the more people you're working with, the higher percentage of time you need to spend just keeping everyone on the same page, not getting work done. Which you can argue that communication is work, but you're not actually
forwarding the project.
Right. You're just making sure everyone is on the same page. And this is if you think of a graph of here's the y-axis, which is amount of time you're spending, and the x-axis is people who are working on your project. It goes really quick.
Yeah.
Until
And I don't even think it's going up straight.
No,
I think it's like
rises very quickly and then tapers off at 100%.
Right, totally.
So, if you imagine, coordinating a group of 100,000 people to all work on the same project, it's just
horrible.
It's a nightmare.
I would never want to do that.
Okay. Communication overhead is the reason that small companies are typically more effective than large companies.
Because you can be fast. Yeah.
And they've actually done quite a bit of research on what's called effective group size, of, what size groups tend to be the best at doing specific types of tasks.
And they do that like in the military, don't they?
They do it in the military. Yeah. They've done this in business. They've done it in hospitals. They've done all sorts of things.
Okay.
And typically, the most effective group size is around 5 to 8. So that's where you're adding a lot of capability, but your overhead, it's going up.
It's like the sweet spot.
Yeah, but it doesn't become crippling.
Okay.
Once you get to about 8, you start to lose group effectiveness. And once you get to about 12, groups tend to splinter into subgroups.
Right, I can totally see that.
So, that's why a team of surgeons at a hospital will usually have no more than 5 to 8 people. Special forces in the military that are, supposed to do very important things very quickly and get it done right the first time are typically around 5 to 8, maximum 12.
Okay.
It's done as a way to make sure the group is spending more time doing things than talking about doing things.
Makes sense.
Which is also why communication overhead is a large part of the reason that people tend to get frustrated when working in a big company. I remember doing work at P&G where, I was coordinating a project that probably had at least 40 to 50 people that were involved in some way, shape, or form. And I remember spending 3 months on a proposal to get approved by a committee just to start a project.
Well, and when you get into those problems too, I can just see, even if people have nothing to say, they feel like they have to just add something just to be adding something.
Yes.
Mess. What a mess.
So that's communication overhead.
Yes,
At a certain point, working with more people, the whole too many cooks in the kitchen type of, I mean, it's the same problem.
Yeah.
You're spending more time talking about doing things than actually doing them. And, once that gets beyond your effective group size, it tends to break down the effectiveness of your team very quickly. So that's the downside of working with people. So if you want to route around this, it's always best to split up teams into more of an effective group size and keep them autonomous as possible. Okay, so it doesn't really help if a team of 5 to 8 people is doing good work and then they have to coordinate with this other committee to get an approval to go back. I mean, that's basically just reintroducing the same problem all over again. So small teams, as autonomous as possible, 5 to 8 people, tends to be the maximally efficient way of organizing things. That is communication overhead.